In this next section of the course, we're going to finally open up our camera app on the iPhone. We're going to look at how to actually navigate it and what some of the features are within it. There are a few different ways to open the camera on your iPhone. From your lock screen, the camera can be opened by the camera icon in the bottom right corner by just holding and pressing it and it will open, or by swiping left anywhere on the lock screen. From your home screen, the camera can be opened by pressing the camera app wherever it's located on your device. Now, at the bottom toolbar, when you open the camera, you can see different modes that you can swipe between, but all we're going to do is stick in the photo section. So if you're not already there and you're following along, you can get into the photo section. At the bottom here, you can see that just by pressing this shutter button, you can take pictures. You can also use the volume buttons on the side of the iPhone to take a picture. You can also set up a Siri shortcut command to take a picture with voice command, or you can control your iPhone's camera with the camera remote app on any Apple Watch, or even if you have headphones plugged in, you could press the volume buttons on those. So there's a bunch of different ways to actually take a picture using the iPhone's camera. We can view the images that we've taken by tapping the icon in the bottom left and then swiping through. If you accessed your camera from the lock screen, then you'll only be able to view the pictures that you've taken in that session. But if you've opened it from your home screen and you've already unlocked your device, then you'll be able to view all of the images in your gallery. The icon in the bottom right is going to switch the camera to the front-facing camera. But again, this course is just going to focus on using the rear camera. There's actually a bunch of hidden features within the iPhone's camera app that will allow you to really unlock the potential of the iPhone's camera. You can access these by swiping up from the bottom toolbar, or you can tap the little arrow on the top toolbar and that's going to reveal them as well. The first one that we see on the left here is our flash. If we select our flash, we have the option to keep our flash off, turn it on, or have it in auto mode. I think by default it's in auto mode, but I usually switch that into off, and I'm only going to turn it on if I know that I need to use a flash. The next feature that we see is our live feature. I think by default, again, this is usually in the live auto mode, so it's going to usually take a live photo. I'm not quite sure when it wouldn't, but if you want to make sure that it's always doing a live photo for you, you can press on. Or if you don't really need the live photo and you want to save on some space on your iPhone, you can turn that off. The next feature that we have is our ability to change our aspect ratio. By default, our camera is going to take images in its 4:3 format, but once you click this, you can select either square or 16:9. The next slider is going to allow us to brighten our exposure if we drag all the way to the right, and darken our exposure by dragging to the left. Another way that we can affect the exposure of our image is just by tapping on the screen, and that's going to use that source point and expose for the area that you tapped. When you tap on a screen, you also see a sun icon that appears. If you drag the sun icon down, you're going to reduce the exposure of your image, and if you bring it up, you're going to make your image brighter. This is something that every time I take a photo, I usually do because the iPhone is going to generally automatically expose for the shadows, and I usually want to expose for the highlights in my image. So I'm always checking the brightest spots in my image to make sure that the iPhone isn't overcompensating for the shadow areas and that I'm exposing for those areas so that they're full of detail. The next tool that we can see in this bottom bar is the timer mode. By default, this is off. You can also set it to a 3-second timer or a 10-second timer. All this is going to do is after you press the shutter, it's going to count you down and then take your picture. This is great if you're taking a group photo that perhaps you want to run into the frame for. It's also great if you need a really steady shot. You can set the timer to the 3-second timer, press shutter, and then just focus on steadying your camera. And that's going to allow you to get the steadiest shot possible. The next tool that we see is our filters section. If we click on this, then we can slide through different filters to put over top of our images before we take them. It's good to know that you can shoot with this mode on and you can select any of these filters. And then later on, if you decide that you don't want one of these filters to be applied to your image, you can always go into edit and change it back to its original or one of the other filters that the iPhone has. The last feature is the HDR mode. By tapping that, we can tap on or we can tap off. It really depends on the situation. Sometimes the HDR mode works great on the iPhone, and then sometimes it doesn't work so great. If I'm in a situation where I need some extra dynamic range, then I might try it out and see how it captures that scene, but usually I have this turned off. So there's a few different ways that we can actually zoom on the iPhone. We can tap one of these 0.5 times or 1 times lenses, and that's going to use the actual lens of the iPhone. The iPhone camera also has digital zoom, so you can actually zoom beyond the 1 times. This depends on your iPhone model. Again, this one goes up to 5 times, but I know that there's some models that also go up to 10 times. Another way that we can zoom is just to drag up and then zoom out or zoom forward. It's interesting to creep up to the 0.9 times and see the transition that happens when it clicks into the 1 times zoom lens. What's happening here is the iPhone's actually using digital zoom for the 0.6 times, 7 times, all the way up to 0.9 times. Once it hits that 1 times threshold, it's going to switch to the other lens. And through this little demonstration, you can actually see the difference in quality between a digital zoom and an optical zoom. When you click one of these icons, you're optically zooming the lenses and selecting either your standard lens, your ultra wide lens, or your telephoto lens. This is the route to generally go because you're going to get the best image quality. Once you start to digitally zoom, you're really just cropping your image and you're going to reduce the quality that you can actually get out of your iPhone. Along the top toolbar, you have some of these tools as well. You have your flash icon in the top left that you can turn on and off. You have your exposure slider again there that you can quickly tap. You have your HDR that you can toggle on or off, and then your live photo mode that you can toggle on and off as well. There's also a couple hidden features with the iPhone's camera. The first one is going to be burst mode. If you're taking an action shot, this is especially useful. What you can do is actually just come down to the shutter, tap it, and then quickly move it over to the left, and you can see a counter start to appear. What's happening here is that it's taking a bunch of images in a row, in a sequence. So when you're done with your burst, you can always come back into your image gallery and select all of the frames that you want to convert and save into single images. Live photos work in a similar way to burst. When you take an image with a live photo and go into editing, you can press edit and come down here where the live icon is, tap that, and then scrub through. And you'll see that the iPhone actually captured moments before you pressed your shutter and moments after. This is really helpful if a moment happens in front of you and you need to quickly react and you just miss that moment. Or if someone blinks in a photo, this is great to find that moment just before they blinked or right after they blinked. Once you find a new frame that you want to save, you can highlight over it, and a little menu is going to pop up that says Make Key Photo. You press that, and then now that moment is saved as the main image. With live photos, you can also convert them into animated GIFs or long exposure images. When you're looking at your photo in your image gallery, you can tap on the live icon in the top left, and it's going to bring up this menu that allows you to change it from a live photo to a loop. This is going to play the animation that the iPhone recorded from start to finish, start to finish. If you set it to bounce, it's going to do a similar thing, but instead it's going to loop the video from start to end and then end to start over and over. The really interesting one for photography that's been recently introduced is the long exposure mode. If you hit this, this is going to blend all of the multiple frames that the iPhone captured into a single image, and it's going to make the motion of your image appear blurred and blend all of those frames together. So if you find a subject that has natural movement, then you can use this mode to capture some really interesting images. With this mode, just be mindful that when you hit long exposure, it's going to actually crop into your image a little bit. So if you know that you're going to be shooting for this long exposure mode, then you'll want to back up a little bit more than you naturally would to allow for the iPhone to crop into the frame that you actually want. Something I just recently discovered and has actually been a game changer for me is that when you're taking an image shooting directly up or directly down, a crosshair actually appears. What this crosshair allows you to do is actually line up your shot so that you're taking a perfect straight down or straight up image. This comes in handy in a lot of different situations, but probably the most useful is actually going to be for food photography, where you want to shoot directly down onto a plate or any other type of lay flat imagery. Another hidden feature of the iPhone's camera is the quick video mode. Let's say that you're in the photo section of your camera and you suddenly want to take a video of a moment. All you need to do is hold down on the shutter and the camera is going to convert that into a video. You can hold this button down as long as you need to record the video. As soon as you let go, it's going to stop it. Alternatively, you can press record and then slide your finger over to the lock position. Once this is locked, you can press the shutter button to the right, and that's going to take still images. And whenever you want to stop the video, you can press stop. Another hidden feature, which I actually use the most out of all of these, is AE or AF lock. What this allows you to do is set and lock your exposure or focus for your image, and then move your camera around or press shutter without it resetting your exposure every time that you press shutter. By default, every time that you press shutter, your camera actually resets the exposure. If you're already needing to kind of bypass that automatic exposure setting to expose for your highlights, it can become kind of annoying to every time you take an image, have to go back and dial down the exposure again. The AEAF lock allows you to just set that exposure, lock it, and then not have to worry about that. Take as many images as you want. If you want to unlock that AE or AF lock, you just need to tap the screen again and it's going to auto expose the image. What I believe to be the most important feature of this list is the exposure compensation feature that the iPhone has and all of the different ways that you can actually manipulate that. When you're out shooting, remember to tap on your image wherever the bright spots are to try to expose for those areas. Once you do this, you can then drag the sun icon up or down to really dial in how bright your image is going to be. Again, if you're shooting with HEIF or JPEG images, you don't have that much latitude to actually alter your images later on. So getting your exposure right in camera is very important. That concludes this section on how to navigate your iPhone's camera. I hope that you learned something valuable and perhaps a new feature or two.